welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I'm your host, Mary Katharine. I'm here with my co-host, Big Matus of the Free Beacon. We got a lot going on, obviously. Israel update and more idiocy and barbarity on the home front to go with that from the citizens and politicians alike. We also have some 2024 polling that is whoa from the New York Times. Want to get to that. News from the Hill, SBF update, and even an update on the Nashville shooting. Also, Mr. Beast, who is the guy your kids watch on YouTube. I want to do a little story about him. But before we get to that, how are you doing, Vic?
Hello, Mr. I'm so loopy today. Hello, Mary Katharine.
You can call me Miss Ham.
I was thinking about Mr. Beast in your mind because I was like, wait, I forgot that story.
I make my children call me that. Yeah.
Okay.
Mrs.
Well, Mrs. Hello, Mrs. Ham. If you're wondering if I'm a little loopy today, it's because I'm on a mixture of various medications.
I love that for you.
Yes. So Sunday night, as I was taking out the garbage, really pulling it out of the container, I was pretty sure that I herniated a disc, which had happened before, but it was like 11 or 12 years ago. So, I mean, it was, it's an unmistakable feeling is what it is. It's kind of this hot, searing, flashing pain in the lower back. If people are familiar with your lumbar knowledge, L5-S1 area, I'm pretty sure. And immediately I'm like, oh, that's it. I just did it. And then I just have to just stop whatever it is I'm doing and then begin a pain regimen that, very much like Elvis Presley. I'm just going to, horse tranquilizers, liquid
you need
cocaine.
To get up for this episode, and then you got to get back down.
Yes, it's a lot
cycle.
going on. So that happened to me. For anyone, listeners, who this has happened to, you know what I'm talking about, where it's the only thing you can think about at that moment. You really can't get anything done. You're just thinking, can I get up? And you dread it. And what happens is you actually notice things that we take for granted. How many times we get up and sit down? We just do these things a lot. So that is unfortunately what happened to me. There's a theory, which is what actually set it off, was on Saturday when we had all our family over at the house. Now, Kate speculates this could be it. And so this is her idea. I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying that she speculates. She wanted to fill a cooler, a very large cooler up with ice and beer. She filled it up in the kitchen.
Oh, dear.
And then said, oh, can you move this now that it's completely full?
And you said, oh, of course.
Of course I did, because,
no problem.
I weight lift. I said, easy, of course. And it was easy at the time. And then the next night, it was when I bent down to get the garbage. And then just like that, I was like, So sometimes it's a little thing that can just get the ball rolling if you're not careful. So I have to be careful. And my posture, if you're not listening, I'm trying to sit upright. That is basically what is happening with me. I really, I should try to be like Elon Musk on Joe Rogan's show. That's what I need to relieve the pain, to alleviate the pain. Something.
Oh, we're just going to smoke weed here?
That's it.
I don't know if it's allowed in this building.
That was a blend, by the way. That's the weirdest thing. It was like a half cigar stogie, half tobacco, and half weed blend, and it was enormous, if you remember.
Can we get one of those on set, please?
Thank you. I don't even think he had back pain, but maybe that's why he doesn't have back pain.
Yes.
See?
Chicken and egg
Mary
situation.
Katharine, how are you?
I'm good. I'm similarly discombobulated, but for no good reason. In fact, I wondered when I came in, did I wear this outfit on Thursday? And I don't care. YouTube, you let me know. It is what it is, people.
We get these outfits in the wardrobe. They just put it on.
Yes,
so
it's provided
it's
for
provided
us.
for us. Botany 500 is what I wear. Yeah.
So I don't think I've told this story on the podcast. My husband herniated a disc when I was pregnant with one of these children, and very pregnant. So it must have been last year towards the end of the year. Similar thing where he had lifted heavy one day, I think, and then the next day something small set it off.
And then it just set it off.
If I remember correctly. It had never happened to him before, so it was a little scary because
it's very scary. The first time is
the pain is severe. It's in your back spine area, which makes you think, oh my gosh, I'm broken forever. In fact, the healing of it goes without too much intervention if you take care of it and you rest.
Yeah.
He did about I want to say a couple weeks off, which for him from the gym is like crazy making.
No, I feel like I'm wasting away already, and it's only been 3 days.
But he did it. There was a funny moment when he was pretty incapacitated, and we took him to the doctor because this had never happened to him before, so he was confused.
Yeah, scary.
We take him to the doctor, and I'm about 8 months pregnant, and I get to the hospital, or the entrance to the doctor, and I say, it's a hospital complex, and I say, how should we do this? Because, he's having some trouble walking. He's like, I'll be damned if my very pregnant wife is pushing me into this facility in a wheelchair. I will stumble and hobble.
I'd love to see that picture, by the way.
The door.
That would be perfect.
But he came out fine. So rest.
Yes.
We will fix this situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm glad to know that I'm in good company, by the way.
Yeah.
Because it's, who it happens to? I'll tell you what it happens to. Guys who lift a lot. I think that's what happens.
Yes.
When they get overconfident.
This is the thing.
And then they're like, oh, I can handle this. And you can. But the posture, here's the thing. And they always say, oh, lift with your legs. That's impossible. Come on.
Gotta lift
Have you ever
with
seen
your
people, what are
legs.
you doing here? Squats? I mean, this is like, really? Lift with
You have
your
to
legs.
position yourself correctly. Lift with your
Yes.
legs. You can actually watch my toddler, natural lifter. She lifts with her legs. It's a beautiful thing. Her form is
Really?
perfect. Anything she wants to lift. Giant
Yeah,
package
she
of
can get down.
goldfish.
And she just raises herself up.
Her brother. No, she hasn't graduated to that yet, but I'm sure she will.
I'm all about lifting with my arms.
That's not good.
No, I guess apparently it's not.
Arms and back.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that, especially
Arms.
with a cooler type situation
Oh
is
my
really a
gosh.
squat situation.
It was, yeah.
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 All right. Well, now we know.
Now we know.
A lesson learned. Okay. Shall we to the news? There's
Let's
a
do
lot. Let's do a little Israel update. As far as the ground incursion goes, it's getting further into Gaza, closer, unfortunately, thanks to Hamas, to places that have more civilians.
Yeah.
So troops are on the ground in those places, and they are in a sticky situation near hospitals, trying to do what they must do to take out Hamas with as few civilian casualties as possible. By the way, I saw a great video this morning that refutes this whole nonsense coming from the Rashida Tlaibs of the world about Israel committing, quote, genocide. There's a video this morning of, it looks like once the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are inside Gaza and have access to the places where people can evacuate, instead of, as Hamas was doing, hoarding those people as human shields, they let just thousands of them walk out of the exit area without shooting them, which is another thing that Hamas with snipers is accused of doing, because they need those people.
Right.
But the IDF would like those people to get out of the area, which is why they've continued to warn them that they should, and Hamas is not willing to help with that. But now that they're in, they can actually guard those areas. One would think if they're guarding those areas with a tank and they wanted to genocide people, that'd be a great opportunity. But it turns out that that's not what happens.
No, it's harmful to the narrative, though, Mary Katharine, because, this is the thing that was about end the ceasefire, end the occupation. What occupation?
There's
Okay,
no occupation.
You want occupation, it's going to happen now. And of course, end the genocide from the river to the sea, the whole thing. And it's all about, how terrible Israel is, when in fact, the deaths of civilians, which are terrible, are the result of Hamas's policies, as we talk about. And it's, Israel's going out of their way. But if, it's a war crime to surround yourself with these human shields. Right. And then they're also firing thousands of rockets indiscriminately.
Every single one of those
apparently
is a war crime.
That's not a war crime, but what Israel apparently is doing is, it is very interesting, because now essentially Gaza City, I believe, is surrounded effectively by the IDF, and they have already begun the destruction of these tunnels. It made me wonder what the end game for Hamas was supposed to be, other than being a cult of death.
I think it was just kill a lot of Jewish
and that's
people.
it, until the next time.
Because they knew any rational person knows that this will happen.
Right.
That no country can exist if it does not retaliate when its children and elderly and women and non-combatants are taken from their homes and tortured.
Right.
You must deal with that.
Right. And on the other hand, among the Gazans, the important thing is that the Israelis, the IDF, they, as you were mentioning, they set this, when possible, humanitarian example, when possible, and to let these people know we're not the monsters that, your Hamas bosses tell you that we are. It's similar, like, to the threats, for example, towards the end of World War II, and the Japanese on islands like Saipan, it was awful, and they told the locals, the Japanese who were there, don't let the Americans take you.
Right.
They're going to kill you, and
Right.
so they would rather have you commit suicide. And again, it is a cult of death.
There's some sad news I came across on Twitter this morning of an IDF officer, Rose Elisheva, who's 20. On the day of October 7th, she took her gun, left her home in southern Israel, and went to protect a neighboring kibbutz from Hamas terrorists. Yesterday, she was stabbed to death by a 16-year-old Palestinian terrorist, inside Jerusalem, I believe. And I just find out she was from the Atlanta area.
Wow.
And so friends of friends know her friends.
Sure.
And so my heart is with all those people who will mourn for her, sweet young lady who was doing her part for her country. On the home front, a man in L.A. carrying an Israeli flag at a vigil or a gathering in support of Israel was killed by a pro-Palestinian protester who hit him on the head with a megaphone. Is the sort of early report on this. The medical examiner has determined that this was not an accidental event.
Yes, it's now being ruled as a homicide. But they're going to look into the possibility it may actually be a hate crime, that he might have been killed because he was Jewish.
Maybe.
I'm not sure.
Maybe. He was a 65-year-old man.
Yeah.
Paul Kessler was his name. Very sad. And in a moment, I should add it's still so terribly sad. But there is a moment where there's video, and just be careful with it. It's disturbing.
Yeah.
Of him when he's injured.
Yeah, he's still responsive.
And a
at
woman
the time.
with a hijab and a Palestinian flag kneeling down next to him to assist him in that moment. If we could just see more of that.
Yeah.
And less of the hitting with a megaphone. I don't know. It's so incredibly tragic.
Again.
In L.A.
In L.A., I was going to say, 2023, not just in L.A., all over the United States, Jews who are visibly Jewish, if they're wearing, a yarmulke, or if they're Orthodox, they fear walking down the street. You might as well put a gold star, on them, because at any moment they can get sucker punched, and this has been happening.
It's been happening.
I was just watching a statement from Germany's vice chancellor. This was really interesting. Habeck is his name. He's a member of the Green Party, but the Green Party, it's a whole separate story about how they've come full circle on so many issues.
Right.
Once they take over, once they're part of government,
naturally,
then they actually have to do real things like
yes.
deploy troops, and they're doing. Joschka Fischer was in this situation 20 years ago. It happens, and the vice chancellor was saying, friends of his, people he knows who are Jewish, who cannot walk down the street, or they stay home and they're isolated because of fear in Germany. It's unacceptable.
Moving to see leaders of Germany express this with such moral clarity. They say that, that in that video, I believe the same one, he says it's our duty to protect the state of Israel because we have moral culpability, our nation, in having created the need for a state of Israel.
He mentions the Holocaust multiple times.
He's much clearer on that than most of the Ivy League. Speaking of which, I saw a video yesterday. Remember the Harvard student who was walking on the quad while they were having a die-in? The pro-Palestinian students were having a die-in. A Jewish student wearing a kippah is walking on the quad, and he's surrounded by these other law students and jostled and probably technically assaulted at times, detained by this group of people. That organization that did the protest released video and pictures of this Jewish student that they think shows that they were in the right. And the video and pictures are just of a young Jewish man walking peacefully through this die-in and taping with his phone. That is just totally allowed.
Well, I think the claim was that they were almost assaulted by the phone. It was very close.
They called it disruptive, and somehow they have a right to.
They were not disruptive, by the way.
They're in a public space doing a public protest, but they have a right to total anonymity or something, and it's intimidation for him to do this. It's actually a perfect mirror or a perfect representation in a smaller form, microcosm, that's the word for that.
There you go.
I talk, guys. Of people's on the pro-Palestinian side insistence that Israel is the aggressor.
Right.
Like, this student was doing nothing, and he
He was a bully.
aggressed, but somehow they're in the right. The thinking on the campuses, not so strong. It's not their strong suit, it turns out.
It is not. And it's funny. It reminds me of times at the Washington Free Beacon where you've had, a lot of these students in Ivy League schools say awful things on social media and Twitter, and then we will republish the screenshots of their tweets, and then they would immediately try to reach out and threaten to sue us for saying, this is, how dare you?
You can't quote me.
This is private. Yeah, you can't quote me. This is private. This is,
Ooh.
There was also that big rally that happened over the weekend.
Yes, we should note.
It got a little rowdy.
Yes. In fact, I believe it was ABC correspondent called it passionate.
Mary Bruce, who's the Washington correspondent of ABC News, and this was the protest that happened on Saturday, and it left a lot of vandalism all over town, particularly around the White House. But
and
you know
what's funny is the vandalism wasn't just about Netanyahu's administration
no, it didn't
in
seem
Israel.
To be
it was,
about that.
Much of it seemed to be about the Jews. I don't know. I can't judge their hearts.
No.
And yet the messaging suggests.
And if you're a tourist, by the way, a lot of that is still there. They haven't gotten rid of it. I assume they will, but I wonder at some point, was there a discussion in the Biden White House about, if we get rid of it, is that racism? Are we going to lose? How many more of these votes are we going to lose?
Is it Islamophobia
Yes.
to take down the Stars of David that they've plastered on
right.
Jewish inhabited buildings and whatnot?
If you scrub that, there goes Michigan. But Mary Bruce of ABC, she had tweeted out, quote, "The White House gates this morning after passionate protests over the weekend."
And there's blood, there's fake blood all over the fences. They also on video scaling those fences.
Yeah, one person actually did with the flag, with the Palestinian flag.
And putting flags through the fence. It does seem like that would be something that would be punishable. Mm-hmm. Perhaps if one were of a different political stripe, that DOJ might have something to say about that.
No, that kind of behavior, I don't know, that took place on January 6th or something.
It seems
might
like
be
something
a bigger
we
news
should
story.
Draw lines about. Well, the perpetrators have helpfully left their handprints and hopefully fingerprints on the wall at the White House, so maybe we could process that.
DC Metro, as of the other day when I checked, had said that they had only made one arrest. And it was for somebody who had apparently vandalized a McDonald's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
But I thought about when this ABC White House correspondent sending this tweet out, either because, of fear or indoctrination. I can't figure out what it is. I thought to myself, we are such a far way away from former White House ABC News White House correspondent Brie Hume.
Oh, gosh.
I used to, who I watched when I was a kid. I said, that guy's good.
He's
solid.
Good. Still good.
Still good.
Still good. Hanging out on the golf course as he should most of his time, and then checking in and still being good.
That's right.
So also one little bright spot in the anti-Semitism news. A woman, I believe in Indiana, was attempting to run her car into what she thought was a Jewish school, and it turned out to be the headquarters of the anti-Semitic group, the
Black Israelites.
Yes, so that's a comedy of errors that nonetheless communicates that a woman in Indiana wanted to run her car into a school full of Jewish children.
That's the dark part of it.
It's grim.
But it's funny that she refers to the Israel school is what she called it, without really realizing what she had done in any event.
Well, that's what's going on there. Oh, I do want to play just a bit of the Rashida Tlaib.
Oh boy.
Ad, I guess, or it's a video release where she refers to "From the River to the Sea," the chant that insists upon the eradication, at the very least, of the entire state of Israel, if not the Jewish people, all the Jewish people that inhabit it.
Assuming they're referring to the Jordan to the Mediterranean.
We stand with Israel.
Mr. President, the American people are not with you on this one.
Innocent civilians are going to be hurt going forward. I wish I could tell you something different. I wish that wasn't going to happen, but it is going to happen.
I want to thank President Biden for his unequivocal support.
We will remember in 2024.
She also accuses in that video President Biden of supporting a genocide, which strangely we don't have a lot of dims and disarray reporting
No.
on this. It seems like a pretty big accusation. The party does seem to have a real problem here because they are having trouble denouncing this type of thing.
And she's all in. She's not backing down.
Oh, no, not at all. You can tell from the video. So that's going on, but they nonetheless can't really denounce that because they are worried about Arab American voters in a swing state, Michigan. Speaking of swing states. You see that? Okay. We have some New York Times Siena battleground poll.
Everybody's talking about this.
From 5 swing states. Yep. I'll just give you the lead from the New York Times. President Biden is trailing Donald J. Trump in 5 of the 6 most important battleground states 1 year before the 2024 election, suffering from enormous doubts about his age and deep dissatisfaction over his handling of the economy and a host of other issues. New polls by the New York Times and Siena College have found. Results show that Mr. Biden losing to Mr. Trump, his likeliest Republican rival, by margins of 4 to 10 percentage points among registered voters in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. Mr. Biden is ahead only in Wisconsin by 2 percentage points.
And I think, by 2 in Wisconsin, and I think basically tied in Minnesota. That is not good.
No.
And it's not going to be. So everyone says, let's not think Michigan and the reasons for Michigan going in Trump's favor, and that the Biden administration is going to be overly obsessed about the Arab American vote, which in Michigan there's a large number of Arab Americans.
His Trump's margin of victory was some 10,000 votes in Michigan, and the Arab American vote in Michigan is hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
So it's certainly they can't afford a ton of drop off there.
Sure. But it's not. But Michigan's a very large state, but it obviously is sticking in their mind that they have to worry about this, and so he's trying to just walk this fine line, but he's not doing a great job of it.
Well, and I think the most disturbing thing for Democrats about this is that sure, Biden should underperform against a generic Republican candidate. Generic Republican candidate is a great candidate. Once the rubber hits the road and you have an actual candidate, things change.
Right.
This poll is making Trump look like a generic R.
Yeah.
Like a guy who's under indictment 91 times for 91 counts is looking like a generic R running against Biden. He looks way stronger than he has any right to be.
It's not that these people who voted for Biden, a lot of these people, some will, but it's not like they're all going to suddenly say they're going to vote for Trump because of his positions. They're just not going to vote. And I think that's what we're looking at here.
And by the way, he's not exactly a generic R. A generic R would be like beating Biden by 15, 20 points.
Right, at this point, you think about that.
Whereas these are much closer numbers, but it's quite shocking. I don't know if that holds, but this is what's interesting to me. Among young people and non-white voters, which are really important.
Biden's base.
Such important segments of the population for Biden to put together in this coalition. Black voters, long a bulwark for Democrats and for Mr. Biden, are now registering 22% support in these states for Mr. Trump, a level unseen in presidential politics for a Republican in modern times. Among Hispanic voters, he's down to a single-digit lead.
That's right.
And his advantage in urban areas is half of Mr. Trump's edge in rural regions, which is, of course, the balancing act of politics, right? If you lose too much in urban areas and Trump's got his old rural advantage where Democrats have been bleeding folks for many cycles, then you are not going to put together the coalition you need.
The questions in the New York Times Siena poll, which is a very reliable poll, are interesting because one of the numbers that came out was that, first of all, what is the main concern for most of these voters in the poll was the economy. It's not abortion and it's not gun rights, right? Which is something that, or LGBTQ issues,
right,
which is something that the Democrats embrace, and they're trying to make this a thing. And for those who believe that the economy is the most important issue, the vast majority of them, maybe not vast, but the majority of them, think that Trump will do a better job than Biden. And here's the other thing. On abortion, it's like 46-40. The voters in the poll favored Biden over Trump. That's not a big lead for Biden, considering what happened at the end of Roe v. Wade, and everybody predicted the end of the world, and yet here we are.
And it has been a problem and was a problem in some midterms, states in 2022
definitely.
If you don't have leadership on that
and there's
issue.
And there's some referenda going on right now, I believe, in Ohio that's happening.
But it should
today.
It should
but
be
it
more.
Should be much more than
they're
that.
They're counting on more than a 6-point problem for Republicans.
There are 3 areas that voters favor Trump over Biden. It's the economy, foreign policy, and immigration. Those are 3 pretty big ones.
Pretty big.
I mean, that's like the whole ball game. So everyone, what are they going to say? They're going to say, "Oh, it's a year away." Right? Just wait. It's a year. Anything can happen.
And a lot of
some of it might be good.
A lot of things could happen to Trump in that time.
It's the only thing that I'm thinking is that's the biggest thing that can stop Trump from winning right now. It's not Biden. It is not suddenly that Bidenomics works. Right. I mean, they're not. You can't talk about mortgage rates. You can't talk about a lot of things. But if he happens to be swamped in, again, I've said this on many shows, legal fees and court dates, conviction. And I think that came out in the poll as well, right? Where if he is convicted, there's a difference in the numbers.
Yes. And there's a New York Times headline that sounds a little like cope. And frankly, I've got the same cope. So I feel you, New York Times. Trump indictments haven't sunk his campaign, but a conviction might. This is our Wile E. Coyote moment once again. However, look, running as a convicted felon is a different ball game. On the other hand, does it energize a bunch of voters who want to avenge this president who has been very badly treated by the justice system in many ways, although I would not say all the ways, because some of this he brought on himself.
Yes.
Speaking of which, before we get to Trump on trial, which he is this week, I would like to point out that my FoxNews.com piece is out. Could Virginia be a blueprint for a Republican red wave in 2024? By tomorrow, we will know more about this.
Yes. So the listeners now to our wonderful show, the midterm, the off-year election. I don't want to say the midterm, obviously. The off-year election happened.
They live in the future.
They live in the future. Hello, future. And Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Big election.
Yes.
Are you willing to tell the voters right now, they're listening right now, what happens in the future, Mary Katharine? Are you willing? You're not willing to say it? What happens to Susanna Gibson? That's what I want to know. Is she going down?
I don't think she's.
Sorry. I could have said it was a come from behind victory because that can happen too. Sorry. I'm just saying.
My column is really family friendly if you want to check it out at foxnews.com. No, but I will tell you this. What we find out will be important because this is a purple competitive state. These are very competitive districts.
Yes.
In some of them in the Northern Virginia, Loudoun County area. That's the one where I walked the district with Juan Pablo Segura.
Yes.
And
guy.
They're doing a couple things, which I think I mentioned last week. But one, they raised money and defined candidates on abortion early with a 15-week limit, which is the governor's set time. He calls it a compassionate consensus.
It's reasonable, and you think about, they make exceptions. And of course, we always like to cite Europe.
And it's something many, many people, including many women voters, agree with. In fact, we'll play an ad from Juan Pablo Segura and his wife, which a Democrat strategist the other day told me was the most effective 30 seconds he's seen on the abortion issue. So we'll play that for you guys.
Having gone through a miscarriage for me and Juan Pablo has really affected the way that we see families every day. I had to have an emergency DNC. Juan Pablo supported my decision with my doctor. What's saddening to me is people want to make this a left and a right issue, and it's not. It's personal. Juan Pablo has focused the last 10 years on maternal health care, and I know he will continue to support women in situations like this.
They did that. They started the early vote.
Yes.
And I'm Rick parrying, and I can't think of the third one right now.
Okay, well, no, I'll save you here. Not with the third. The third was energy. Oh, sorry, that was there's an interesting thing going on in terms of the early voting,
right?
Because if you look at a number of the districts or counties that went for Glenn Youngkin in was it 2021?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, those areas are now, you see a larger turnout in early voting,
right?
Which means that you could extrapolate that to assume that those are more red than blue. We'll see if that happens. And
I think a huge part of that is changing Republican voters' minds about this being some sort of scam. It's not some sort of scam. Voting early is something where you can bank votes early. These are the rules of the game. We should engage in the rules of the game and then have money to spend at the very end, bringing the rest of these voters in. I wrote it on my hand so I didn't forget. The third one was that they recruited good candidates. Youngkin,
if only Rick Perry did that. It's such a simple remedy.
Youngkin backed 10 of 10 that he backed in primaries, won those elections. So anyway,
it's probably it's better than other endorsements.
A bit of a test run, including for whether you could capitalize on any of the loss among non-white voters.
I'll say two things I'm interested in, and listeners will know more about it than I will. One is Ed Durr. The senator, Ed the trucker in New Jersey. There was a redistricting that happened. This is this is the state election. It's not a congressional election, but hopefully he prevails. And I wanted to mention, not just as a joke, but Susanna Gibson, but I sent this to you right before we went to tape, which is the Associated Press had a headline about her. And the headline is Susanna Gibson, in this very important fight. That part I'm paraphrasing. Mm-hmm. But the phrase they used was, endured sex scandal. She endured it.
Oh, she endured it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was all
it's
about...
not all she endured. You know what? Let's zip up this segment and move on.
My back, Mary Katharine. You're hurting my back.
Move on to Iowa, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. More 2024 news. This is very interesting. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds endorsed Ron DeSantis for president Monday. Yeah. After months of quietly signaling her support for Ron DeSantis, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds will formally endorsed the Florida governor for president at a Des Moines rally Monday. The endorsement is an enormous win for DeSantis, who hopes to harness Reynolds' star power among Iowa Republicans as he looks to jumpstart his stagnant campaign and establish himself as a clear alternative to frontrunner Donald Trump in the race's critical final months. Okay, this is on paper a big deal, a very big deal.
Yeah.
Iowa governors don't generally endorse. Iowa governors aren't often as popular as Kim Reynolds is. Now, Trump's going to be mad about this. Here's the thing, and this is the thing always with Trump. Who knows if it works or not? Perhaps the good people of Iowa turn against Kim Reynolds because she has been disloyal to Mr. Trump, right? That's always the risk of these transactions.
Yeah.
She believes DeSantis...
especially in the we're talking about the primaries here.
She believes that DeSantis is a better option. Perhaps one of the reasons she decided to endorse, when that is not the normal way of doing things, is because the former president was talking a bunch of junk about her.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Trump is always like, I can do whatever I want with impunity. You're not allowed to do anything to me. So sometimes that doesn't go as well as maybe he planned.
He was very dismissive of Kim Reynolds, to say the least. I didn't need it, as he says, but
and he might not.
No, and he might not, because even if DeSantis were to do well and somehow beat Trump in the Iowa caucus, which is, what is that, February?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. It's around the corner. I mean, based on today, we're a year away now, 364 days or something. That could make a difference, or it could be like Pete Buttigieg winning, which didn't make much of a difference for various reasons. And New Hampshire, for that matter, and oftentimes your nominees don't always win New Hampshire.
Well, the ones who do well in Iowa don't always fit as well.
That's right.
With the New Hampshire.
That's right.
Electorate.
So not until once you get into South Carolina and then heading into Super Tuesday, Trump could be in the middle of a court battle at that time. I mean, this is really insane. So I don't know how much of it's going to make a big difference for DeSantis. But I mean, it's good for him. Every press release I got yesterday was all about him and Kim Reynolds. Yeah. So he needs this.
And like I said, she's popular, which helps.
Yeah. He's looking to jumpstart this.
Well, in Iowa, I think is
alien
where
campaign.
you have to make a splash,
Yeah.
or his campaign has to make a splash. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was in court this week in New York. Letitia James bringing the case against him about fraud regarding his estimations of value for his real estate holdings. He was in court and took the mic in court. We don't have audio of that, but I think because they're not do that inside the court. But we do know a little bit about what he said. It says, this is CNN reporting, Donald Trump brought bombastic rhetoric to the witness stand Monday in the civil fraud case against him and his business as he spent his time on the stand attacking the New York Attorney General, who brought the case, and the judge overseeing the trial itself. Trump's testimony at times mimicked his appearances on the campaign trail, where the former president has made the 4 criminal cases against him, along with the New York Attorney General's civil fraud case, a central part of his argument to be elected president again in 2024. Judge Arthur Engoron, who has clashed with Trump throughout the trial, at first tried to stop the former president's political barbs and speechifying, telling his lawyer Chris Kise to control your client and threatening to have Trump removed as a witness. Eventually, the judge stopped trying to control Trump. He and the attorney general's lawyer, questioning Trump, let him rant, and then mostly disregarded the missives.
He was able to use this as yet another opportunity.
Yeah, well, also,
Is
that a microcosm for our nation or what?
No,
like, just let him rant, and we'll sort of like take in what we can.
Yeah, that's right. It's worth remembering this is a civil trial and not a criminal trial, so there's not this sort of, the gravity of a proceeding. It's more of a grandstanding going on here, and this is a civil trial to determine penalties for his overstating the value of his real estate for banking and insurance benefits.
Well, and apparently James already goofed on the statute of limitations for most of the charges she wanted to bring in this case, so there are fewer than she had hoped.
And yet her aim is to somehow fine him $250 million and ban him from doing any business in New York.
Seems like it might be a stretch.
That would be a stretch, I think. On the other hand, you never know with these jurors. It's just for Trump, it's yet another opportunity, and he needs to have that attention, and he's using it. And here's my concern for former president, which is he likes getting up there, even if you're not being videotaped, and he loves talking about it. And they're talking about all of the getting the approval for the valuation of all his properties. On the one hand, what you should say is that, you have enough of these buffers that these people dealt with it. I had no idea. But he likes to take credit when possible. And sometimes it works to his advantage, saying, no, I knew this was wrong. I knew this was right. We undervalued this for one reason or the other. But then the more he talks about his involvement in the good things, the more the prosecutors are trying to make the case, well, there you go. He is involved. Therefore, he willingly and knowingly overvalued these things. And the biggest thing that can happen, the biggest threat for Trump, is a code red from A Few Good Men, where he gets whipped up into saying, yeah, and then he says, you're GD right. You're GD right. I ordered the code red.
I could see that happening.
Yes.
I could see that happening. Opening his... Look, I think he should...
You're right. I overvalued Mar-a-Lago, and then that's it,
I do think he should be allowed to speak, and whatever gag orders anyone puts in place, because he is running for president, he should be allowed to speak publicly and defend himself, should be very, very narrow if they exist at all. And also, I think he will trip himself up as a result of that freedom. But it is what it is.
Did you, by the way, really quickly see David Axelrod tweeting out about urging President Biden to...
yeah, that seems like a big deal.
To go back just a little bit.
There's too much going on for 2024, y'all.
Yes.
There's too much going on.
He's getting attacked, but is he just basically saying what everyone's thinking on their side? We all think this.
But well, and here's the thing: is that the signal to everyone that, hey, we got to get to work on fixing this? I've looked up the rules for this. The party has a lot of latitude for this kind of thing. The problem is, can they get out of their Kamala succession problem? Yeah. Because she is not a strong candidate. And I think, and the president has a lot of power, even though the parties have a lot of power. The president himself wants to be president. He's wanted to be president since he became a politician. Right. So the idea that he would let go when he's an incumbent, I don't think is realistic. Yeah. And so, as I said on Hannity the other night, barring some precipitating event, I think that Biden is the nominee. And by that, I mean something could happen.
Well, I mean, yes, that's right. Something, yeah.
I just mean a natural event, guys. I'm not talking about Hillary suiciding him. I'm just talking about Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah. It's again, it's that kind
Jokes,
of show.
jokes, parody,
They're all
ha ha ha.
jokes. But I feel like we are, we're verging towards this electoral disaster in which you could have a sitting president and something happen.
Sitting in jail?
Sitting in jail. So no, well, that can happen too. But
Oh yeah,
something,
the former president would be the one, yeah.
right? So something happening to him, somehow being incapacitated, and on the other hand, an opponent who then becomes the nominee as well, right? We select him as our nominee at the Republican convention, and then a conviction happens, and then what?
I don't know, man. Did you see the press this week, by the way, going appalled that there are reports from the Trump camp that they might go after their political enemies using the power of the DOJ and federal law enforcement? What a pioneering tactic we have definitely never seen before.
Yeah.
All right. Should we move on to the Congress where things are definitely more functional?
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we have a Speaker of the House, so that's good news.
Yes.
Now they're having a fight over Israel funding, Ukraine funding, border funding. Right. That's the same fight we've been having for a while, but now there is a person in charge of the House, so they were able to pass an Israel funding bill out of the House,
right,
paid for with cuts to the IRS expansion of 85,000 agents or employees or whatever it was.
Employees,
employees, not agents. And of course, the Senate doesn't like this, says it's dead on arrival. However, this is how politics works. If you pass something out of the House, you have leverage because you have passed something. And you have passed something with Israel funding, which is what the president wants. Now, the president says he will veto it unless it is joined with other things. That bluff can be called with the Senate as well. The Senate, meanwhile, over there, they want to link, and Johnson, new Speaker of the House, suggests that they should link Ukraine and border funding. So that, okay, you get to spend on defending Ukraine's borders, but we will also defend our own borders.
Right.
That's where it stands right now. And by the way, the government's probably going to shut down in a couple weeks anyway. So, right?
Yes.
But we have a speaker.
We do, and clearly there are differences, obviously, between the leadership for the Republicans in the Senate under Mitch McConnell and the support for Ukraine, and tying that with support for Israel,
right,
and of course Mike Johnson, and they want to keep this separate. I mean, there's a whole other, segment of the Republican party that does not support as staunchly helping Ukraine. And so, I mean, we're going to come to that point. But while this is happening, I continue to be amazed by all the attacks on Mike Johnson.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like really trying to find something.
They're quite amazing. The most recent
Nobody
one.
would have cared. It's amazing.
Most recent one is Rolling Stone, trusted source.
You send it to me, and out of principle, I didn't click it on because I knew the story, but I was like, ugh.
Look, I'll summarize so that we don't have to give them.
This is terrible.
Rolling Stone reported on. Look, this is a man who's very open about his faith and the things that he believes and the way that he observes that faith. And one of the ways that he was talking about setting up sort of guardrails for himself and his 17-year-old son was that they used a technology that monitored both of their electronic devices. It's like an accountability partner situation for PRON. Is that how you spell that?
Run?
Sorry. PRON. I know how to spell too, guys. I know how to talk. I know how to spell. I'm a writer and a public speaker, okay? PORN. I was trying to be nice for
that's
parents.
good. That's good.
Even though we weren't nice to them earlier with that other segment. So he has this setup where basically it's a guardrail for them not to do this.
Things, yes.
And it's this huge. They make it into like this creepy thing where they're monitoring PORN together. No, that's not what's happening. And this is, to me, a similar reaction to the Pence rule, right? Which
you wait until the shoe's on the other foot, and then they're going to be like, thank goodness he does this.
Well, like a religious, observant family might do things differently than another family would do things. But I am very sympathetic to people setting up guardrails for themselves and protection around their relationships and families and children for things that we know are quite harmful.
Yeah.
And this is actually, as Meghan McArdle was pointing out on Twitter the other day, workplace violations and sort of blurred lines. And this is stuff that the left is allegedly worried about.
Yeah.
And yet when someone takes proactive measures to do it, They get all
Oh,
up in
they're having a
arms.
field day, and they're having a field day on the late night talk shows because it's more fodder for them to make fun of Mike Johnson. Look, they're trying. Everybody's trying. This is a terrible thing. You know, how do you keep your kids from?
He's trying to get
Yeah,
a straight face
I
while he
know.
says-
You're laughing at me.
I know I'm
over
not, I'm
here.
not,
You're-
no.
I see that look, and you're like, oh, come on now. You would never do that. This is just
No.
true. All I'm going to
This
say
is a night of Columbus over
come
here.
on, a fourth degree. The problem with the word you spelled out
Right.
is that it skews reality,
Yes.
right? It's both reality and expectations, and obviously
and
you
it
get
makes
morally
your-
depraved.
it
I mean,
can-
you just go down a you should go down a hole. Excuse me. It just it gets to this point where you cannot be.
Yes.
You will not be.
And it can damage your real life
Yeah,
relationship.
that's exactly what I'm
So
trying to say.
Trying to help with that seems like not a crazy thing. Can I talk briefly also about another thing online this week, which is the
Thank you for getting me
the
out of
pre-
that.
no the
by the
pre- the prevalence of this idea that the only reason Christian evangelicals support Israel is because there
trying to
will be
convert 'em,
some
though.
will be some future conflagration and Israel must exist in order for the end times
Oh,
to
yes,
happen.
the end times.
At
Yeah,
which
it's a
point
big deal.
the
Yeah,
rapture
yeah.
happens,
The
and
rapture,
we're very
yes, of
into
course.
that.
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
look, there are people who preach this. There are people who understand Revelation and the Scripture who talk about this. There are people who think about the rapture. Left Behind is an entire,
Yes.
very well
Yes.
selling series
Yes.
that is about that. However, in my experience, in the American South for the entirety of my life, and as an evangelical in many denominational and non-denominational circles, I never heard the idea that your geopolitical support for Israel should be based upon this end times
thing.
idea. But it has become very prevalent to assume
Yeah.
that is what's going
The only
on. And
reason.
I would argue that particularly in the American
it's-
South, where I was, it's a more simple thing, which is U.S. ally, Democratic outposts, where Jesus lived, and also a lot of evangelical Christians understand that if your neighbor wants to kill you, you should be heavily armed and not let them do so.
Yeah.
That's like just kind of a thing
pretty
with
straight-
us in the states of Georgia and North Carolina
It's
and
pretty
Alabama.
It's pretty straightforward.
But it's not to say that doesn't exist. It's just that
Sure.
in my pretty vast experience, it does not define
Right.
this part of support for Israel. So I just want to get that out there. People would tell. One person told me that on Twitter that Left Behind is actually proof that evangelicals are really into this thing, and I'm like, man, that's a work of fiction.
Is
But-
is that Kirk Cameron?
No.
It's something else.
Different series.
Okay, all right. Different series. Thank
Okay,
you.
what do we have left?
Briefly.
Quickly, two more things.
Yeah.
SBF
Yes.
going to jail,
Oh.
convicted of all the things. It turns out his slick show and his trashy T-shirts and cargo shorts weren't getting him out of this one. So he faces over 100 years in prison at sentencing.
Yeah. Sentencing won't be till March.
Yeah.
But he is what's the word? Remanded to MDC Brooklyn, where he has been, and apparently very difficult for him because he is a vegan, and they're only serving him, according to his lawyer, a flesh diet.
Oh,
Flesh. Like this is like Green Inferno or something.
Jeez.
You know, is this cannibalism?
yeah. Play the smallest violin.
It is. It's
SBF.
funny. When this happened, I actually had to go back and remind myself what happened, and it was all about taking funds illegally, obviously from FTX,
Yeah.
investors to Alameda Research, and then cooking the books. That's all it is cooking the books.
Well, and
right?
and stealing a bunch from a bunch of people.
Oh yeah, sure.
And
And using that money, not just to shore up Alameda, right? But also real estate investments, fancy real estate investments and I think his parents were
and
involved
a political protection racket so that
Donations.
so that he would be
Right.
protected from any kind of regulation that they might want to.
Exactly. And then of course the whole element of, I don't know, they had dozens of witnesses turn against him, including the on and off again girlfriend Caroline Ellison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's playing with fire, man.
Yes.
Alrighty, so that happened. One more little update, and then I have something a little lighter to close out the show. We have an update on the Nashville Covenant shooter.
Yeah.
This is the young woman,
Yeah.
perhaps trans,
Yes.
male, female to male, who shot up a Christian school.
Right.
And you'll remember that we didn't have the manifesto because it was not released. Now, the non-release of that manifesto has been the subject of months of litigation in Tennessee
Yeah.
over whether it's a multi-sided legal battle waged by watchdog agencies, independent news outlets seeking transparency for this. It seemed odd that it was not released. Often manifestos are. I don't know that manifestos do us a bunch of good because this is a crazy person.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, driven by some motivations, but mentally ill people. And I'm not sure the publication and the publicization of these things, publicizing of these things is necessarily helpful to society. But if we have a standard, we should do that standard and make it content neutral. Like no matter what this shooter's
Just say,
motivations are,
this is it.
let's do the release or not do the release. This one seemed like maybe we're not releasing it because the narrative is not served.
Right. It could be harmful for a certain movement.
And the narrative, by the way, was flipped on its head by Democrats in Tennessee who suddenly made themselves and the trans community the victims of this shooting, even though it was Christian children who were targeted?
Yes. They got very little coverage, the children themselves.
Yes.
Who were not part of this movement. And instead, it was like they all ran to the defense of the shooter.
Right. So
it's insane.
It's crazy. And to the point that at protests at the state capitol, they put up 7 fingers for 7 victims, which included the shooter in the victim tally.
Exactly.
So
awful.
Stephen Crowder, who is a YouTube personality, was leaked pictures of part of this manifesto. I think that it is safe to talk about it because the police in the area confirmed that they're trying to figure out who leaked this. So I think it is accurate. And strangely, look, it's a lot of ranting about, her trans journey. She's 28 years old. She was going from Audrey to Aiden Hale. She broadcasts that she's going to do this. She talks about how she was surprised she didn't get caught, and there might have been several times where she should have been. Then she talks about sort of racially motivated, even though she's white, that she wants to kill some little crackers, kids with white privilege. Yeah. And the press reaction to this from the mainstream press, there was one guy particularly in Tennessee, is to say that this is selectively leaked and it's an unfair representation of this, and this is why we need real press to do this. Okay. Look. Every report on any shooter's manifesto is a selective reporting of what is on the manifesto, unless it's just a printing of the entire thing.
Right.
The press regularly picks what it wants from a manifesto to sort of put a shooter in someone else's political pile, not the left's. And I don't see a giant difference there.
Right. To amplify the narrative.
Yes.
And just picking. Nitpicking. So no, I saw that as well. The photo that Stephen Crowder had taken of parts of this quote unquote manifesto, and it's a lot of anger, resentment, and obviously mental illness. Yeah. And again, wanting the white person wanting to kill, white children and just being
for their white privilege.
Yes, and it just seeing them go to school. I mean, it's really dark and disturbing. And but again, we should have a right to,
Well, if the press prints manifestos, let's just have that be the rule. Right. If the cops release them, let's just have that be the rule. Or that we don't. I don't.
Right.
Whichever way, let's make it a consistent standard, because people get, and by the way, you have all sorts of denialism that comes into these situations, which is not helped by what looks like a politically motivated decision to hide someone's motivations on this. Okay, let's go to something happier. American YouTuber Mr. Beast. Are you familiar with him?
Not at all.
Watch Mr. Beast? Okay.
Not at all.
Mr. Beast is very popular, and for all sorts of sort of YouTube gags. But one of the things he does is he uses his tremendous amount of money and following to create good in the world. At one point, I think we might have mentioned it on the show. He donated money for surgeries for those who had sight loss.
Oh. Okay,
and so people could literally see again.
Oh my gosh.
Because of the money that he put into that. American YouTuber Mr. Beast's latest video, in which he says he built 100 wells across Africa, has drawn a complex response online since it was published on Saturday. Seems weird, right?
Oh, yeah, yes.
Like, why would it be complex?
Oh, I'm going to guess, but go ahead. Tell me first.
Some Kenyan activists and journalists, and Americans as well, so that he has spotlighted the failures of the Kenyan government, while Mr. Beast, whose real name is Jimmy Donaldson, anticipates that he will be, quote, canceled following the reaction. The reason he thinks he'll be canceled is because he has been gone after before. Because
because I was just trying
The
to
left
help.
argues, and many activists who are more sort of socialist in their motivations argue that this isn't his role, that capitalism is to blame for these failures, and that therefore capitalism fixing it is somehow bad.
Yes,
and
you're ruining it. You're ruining the narrative.
And the government should fix it, even though the government's not fixing it, and in fact is corrupt and slow and unable to do so at times, and that his charity is therefore some sort of an affront and self-aggrandizement and not his place. But there are 100 new wells in Africa.
Yeah.
That seems like a big deal.
At the end of the day, he did something very good.
The new wells will provide clean drinking water for up to 500,000 people in Cameroon, Kenya, Somalia, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. He says, while an accompanying fundraiser to support local water aid organizations had raised more than 300,000 by Monday morning. Look, I know that liberals want governments to solve problems, and that they think that's the only person who can do so. Who will build the roads? Who will build the roads?
And debt forgiveness.
Yeah. Often they're bad at it.
Yeah.
If this guy can use his money that he has earned to do these things, that is good. That's called charity.
What he needs,
we like that.
What he needs is Bono to give him cover. It's like,
Bono would, because Bono believes in capitalism as a force for good.
As you know, and he also he was a big fan of George W. Bush and PEPFAR. So I mean, there you go. I will say this: there's a downside to regaining your sight. I read about this. No joke. Yes. The weirdest thing, they say, for people who have not regained their sight, but discovered sight for the first time. So suppose you are blind.
Right.
This is happening now where you can actually see. Not only are you disoriented in terms of how you walk around because everything is, you got to get used to the dimensions. But apparently, one of the weirdest things, according to one person who discovered sight, was watching people eat. It was the most disgusting thing he'd ever seen. Because the idea of it, this mouth, like, you even think about it, we see this all the time. I see Colin over here with his mouth open right now and sticking his tongue out. And it's like, think about like somebody you're at a dinner or lunch, it's like, what is that? What is this thing opening in your face? And like,
and this is the terrible stuff that Mr. Beast has brought upon
This is what I'm saying. So, careful what you wish for, Mr. Beast.
Let me close this with one quote, one silly quote from all of this. Again, this is a person who built 100 wells. Overnight, this person comes along who happens to be a white male figure with a huge platform, and all of a sudden he gets all the attention. It's kind of frustrating. But it's also understanding the nature of how the world is. Well, for that tragedy, we are sad.
So sad.
Today. He's also, by the way, rebuilt a medium-sized town, or like revitalized a medium-sized town in North Carolina, Greenville, which is where he's from. And he employs a bunch of people, and it's tragic. It's tragic.
I wish Mr. Beast would come and rebuild my garage. And make it like a car can fit in there.
Maybe he can put you on his list, and he can be a white savior to this
Northern
Virginia Asian American man.
That's right. His little brown brother, as President William McKinley once said. Okay, that wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Matus.
I'm at MK Hammer, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow us at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram, and you should. Thanks for being here. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.